Welcome to the Gamers Inn. Come on in, pull up a chair next to the fire. It looks like you've had a long journey. I'm your host, Jocelyn, and joining me as always is my co-host, Ryan. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, how are you today?
I am not too shabby.
I know. You've had a rough Tuesday, but Wednesday, right?
I am very glad that Tuesday is done.
Yeah, that's good.
Also, I'm laughing right now because Jim is in the chat room. We did actually have a very, very good night last night in terms
Good.
of sub numbers over on twitch.tv/JossPlays. And so we were able to unlock the next, I guess, two emotes. I haven't made the second one yet, but
Whoa.
Thrall is back from the dead. So Thrall is all over the Game Move chat room right now.
So
I'm glad that
wait,
you're happy, Jim.
so there's Thrall, and you had enough subs to get a whole other icon as
Yeah,
well.
so yeah, now I have to make something that is I think probably some sort of wine glass, wine bottle, wine something, maybe just grapes, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
But
like
we're going to do some kind of wine emote. But yeah, so we had yeah, it was an okay night yesterday. It was just yeah. I'm glad Tuesday's over. For those of you who didn't hear or who weren't paying attention to Twitter, my Patreon got hacked, and that really sucked. So we're still working on sorting all that out. If you are currently supporting me on Patreon, there's no issue with that. I got my account back and was able to change everything back and do the two-factor authentication and everything else. So all of that stuff with Patreon is sorted out from your perspective. It's just all of the crap that they did while they were in there is probably going to take a while to sort out. So
did they like throw the furniture around? Is that what they
well,
did?
yeah, they changed a whole bunch of stuff. They unfortunately, there's no actual way to like link your PayPal account the way that you link anything else.
Hmm.
So, like when you link stuff with like Facebook or Twitch, like there's like an authentication there, and when things get changed, they're like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And you have to be verified on. And but anyways, basically, all it is for PayPal is you literally just it's like a form in
Right.
the web page, and you just enter whatever email you want Patreon to pay. And so basically what happened is they just changed that email. There was no verification or anything, and then they took my dollars. So that
Ugh.
sucks. But yeah, we're working on getting dollars back, and it won't affect anything going on with April. So
I can hear the pasting.
yes.
It's with such vigor. He's so excited
Everyone
that
is
Thrall's
so
back.
excited that Thrall's back. So Thrall is adorable, I will say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, that's what happened yesterday with
Mm.
the whole Patreon debacle. But doesn't affect the gamers in Patreon. That one's still fine. It was my own personal one, so that's done. Let's never talk about it again. And people are just dicks, and we'll just
Yeah.
leave it at that. That's
The
kind of
internet.
yeah. That's kind of how I felt at the end of yesterday. Is people are just dicks.
Oh, that's well. There are less dicks surrounding us, because we only surround us with the best people. We usually keep the dicks.
Ryan, I don't know how you're going to try to finish that sentence, but I think you should just stop and we should just start talking about what we're playing because
Exactly.
we have been playing some pretty cool stuff. I think I'll probably start it off with something that a
Yeah.
lot of people have been, I guess, requesting and asking us if we're going to cover Dark Souls 3. So I think we've been a little bit pretty upfront actually with our views on Dark Souls 3. Basically the Dark Souls franchise, and I posted a GIF on Twitter, or I guess I retweeted on Twitter a GIF a couple days ago, and basically it was like stick figure dude sitting down in front of computer. It says Dark Souls 3, there's new game, options, and tutorial. He clicks on tutorial and it just says, you died. Which
Hmm.
pretty much sums up how I feel about that franchise every time I sit down and try to play. So I'm not actually playing, but I'm lucky enough to live with someone who's actually really freaking good at video games, and he's been playing, and I've been able to watch him do some different stuff and
Hmm.
run around and do some little mini boss battles and big boss battles and summon different people in. If you are into games like that, like it is a very punishing franchise. It always has been, but man, it is. So he's playing on PC and it is freaking beautiful in a really, really creepy way. But like the
Right.
graphics on it are really, really impressive. And the character design is so cool. Matt was fighting this boss and it was
Hmm.
like, this had like really, really over exaggerated, elongated, like torso and limbs and stuff. It was almost like reminded me of like how bugs must look at stick bugs. They're just like, what's even going on there? So it was like a person that just got like stretched. And then
That's weird. I'm glad that you mentioned that Dark Souls 3 looks good because that was one of my concerns that I always had with previous Dark Souls games. I never thought they actually looked that great.
yeah, no, this one looks
yeah.
really, really cool. And
Cool.
so, yeah, the design of this character was already over the top. And then just like there was like all these like wispy clothing on it and stuff. And then it had a fire weapon and like a magic weapon. So there were two different colors. And, but again, really, really punishing game. Like you get hit one time and it takes away like 75% of your health. It was insane. I'm just like, you know, watching Matt play it, I can be like, yeah, I see how you're supposed to get behind that guy, and I understand this mechanic, but I'm not fast enough on my button pushes, I guess. So,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
the whole
it's
like get good scenario, right?
yeah,
With the, Dark Souls 3 is just the Dark Souls in general and Bloodborne as well was just when you died, you wanted to blame the game, but you know it's your fault. Like you're just not as good as the developers intended their players to be. And that's
yeah,
how I feel.
exactly,
I'm
yeah.
not commenting on anybody else. I'm talking about my own personal. I played Demon Souls quite a bit back in university. Actually, Matt and I all picked it up and played, and Kearney obviously got the farthest. I got to a point where there was a boss that was like off the screen. It was like a giant knight, and he kicked my ass and every time. I'm like, this is not fun. I don't know if I can get good. I think I'm just gonna go play.
I think I'm
Like,
just bad, and I think that
yeah,
that might be okay.
it's okay to not be good at Dark Souls because guess what? The creators of Dark Souls doesn't want everybody to be good at their game.
That's true.
They build it for a specific group of gamers that some would describe as masochists, but like really good masochists. Like just they love punishing themselves, but they're just it's only once in a while because they're that good at video games.
I see.
We've had people commenting and sending in tweets like, "Oh, I haven't heard you guys talk about Dark Souls 3 because we usually cover like every big release, and I knew this one was going to be that like point of contention, especially since we covered Bloodborne, and yeah, so I'm glad we have an outlet for that. So I'm glad you checked it out. I'm glad you watched it from afar,
Yeah,
and
I think that is really the best way for me to experience Dark
yeah,
Souls 3 is just watching people do playthroughs because, yeah, I definitely am not good enough to play this game, but it is and I don't know in terms of story wise, but at least graphics wise, like, I mean, there was a giant dragon sitting on top of a castle, breathing fire over half of it, like, yeah, it's a really beautiful game. The graphics are really, really good, and it's just character design wise really interesting choices, and I have enjoyed. I mean, it still has that really muted quality to it, like it's lots of blacks and grays and browns
sure.
and whites, but it's still it's done very, very well so that you don't feel like you're missing anything. Like it fits the game. So
Right.
I really liked it. It was really cool. And it's got a really neat sense of humor sometimes too. Like there was this one point when Matt picked up some loot and got a helm from a mimic, which is basically a treasure chest that turns into a monster when you go to try to open it.
Right. I hate those things.
Yeah, and so essentially the helm was giant and it looked like a treasure chest with teeth and a tongue sticking out of it. Like it was pretty funny. And then Matt's like, "Oh, look at this cool helm I got. You know, come check it out." And by the time I came over and looked, he was dead because the helm was actually killing him as he was wearing it and he didn't realize.
Oh no.
I was just like, "Oh my god." This game though.
I feel like I see my curiosity often gets the better of me, and I feel like it would be fun to try Dark Souls 3 because I've tried all of them, and they usually like one thing or another like kind of pushes me away, and I feel like these type of games, if you just put your head down, you focus, and you just try your best to learn the mechanics and really just get a feel for them, you can be good enough at the game to start a progress. Like I don't think Dark Souls 3 gets harder as you go. I just think it's always
It's
difficult.
just always, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a plateau of difficulty, and it doesn't ramp. It just, it just stays hard that long.
Yeah.
They should call a doctor, really, is what I think they should do.
Oh man, but yeah. So if you have played previous Dark Souls, this one is definitely a step up, and you should consider picking it up.
All right,
Obviously, Ryan and I probably won't, but
probably
you
not.
guys should if that's the kind of thing that you're into. So Ryan, you've been diving into something that I was looking at and playing a little bit last week, but now you have surpassed me.
I didn't get that much farther than you because that game is really interesting, and I had no idea going into it what it was just based on what you described. It's got Batman combat. It's sort of an isometric game where you move your fox around and crazy dark shit happens right at the beginning. Like,
Right? Okay,
it,
so I don't know if we should even spoil this or not, but like I was
it's like right at the
shocked. It's
beginning.
right at the beginning, within the first like probably 20 minutes. It's
Mhm.
definitely in the first act before you really go anywhere with the game. You kind of get your first couple of abilities
Uh,
and it's almost like the tutorial level, and then at the end of the tutorial this event happens and you're just kind of like, "Oh yeah, I have to just go save this dude. That's cool." And then like he's just dead.
yeah.
Like
And not just dead, he's
he's
vaporized.
vaporized. He's just a little pile of ashes, and then you have to like go pick something, the book, I guess, up out of his
Yeah.
pile of ashes. Like, oh my God, Ryan.
I was like, well, that happened. And he didn't seem like awfully, upset, but he's just like, well,
Well, yeah,
shoot.
that happened.
So I hate those things. They always vaporize my friends. Uh,
Yeah.
and the reason I say I didn't get much farther is because I kind of wanted to. I got to a point where a certain mechanic that may have been advertised in the trailers. I don't know. I didn't watch any like.
I didn't know
Tra-
anything about this going in, so.
yeah, so it caught me off guard, which is why I said, "Oh, play a little bit more. You're like so close to this moment." And and I will spoil the moment, but I'm not going to spoil the story around it. But the
Okay.
moment comes across when you progress to the end of that story, and at the end of that story, whether something happens and it ends the story, and then the book closes, and then it says you wake up at or no, it ends and then it like sort of shifts to the side and it's like this chart. And the reason the game's called stories is because there are multiple stories to discover based on the choices that you choose.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, so I definitely I'm not that far.
Mhm.
I think I've played 3 chapters, I guess,
Sure.
of my story. So,
And it really depends on what choices you make, I think. The
mhm.
choices that I had came to a conclusion after 5 levels. And I tried to get through one more before we recorded tonight.
Mhm.
And I didn't get that far, but I'm about 3. And it seems like based on the choices you make, maybe you can progress farther in the story. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, it's really cool and a great way to sort of encourage replayability. But I think replayability is the whole point of the game.
Mhm.
You're trying to discover, the story. You're trying to save the world, and you can't save the world when it just doesn't go right and the story has to end prematurely. So in this case, when the story ends, it's kind of like the book is a time travel device. So keeping in fashion of Gamers Inn's obsession with time travel, when the book story ends, the book just like goes back to the beginning, and
Ah.
you start over. Uh,
Do you always play as the Fox character, or is it like the stories of a whole bunch of different characters?
you're always playing as the fox. So the
Okay.
fox, Ronaldo or Renato or whatever his name is, he has the book in his possession. So as soon as the story ends, it just goes to the side and says you completed story number 5 and unlocked truth number 1. And there are 4 truths to
Hmm.
discover, which unlock something. I don't know, maybe the end of the game. I'm not sure. In which probably means you only have to complete it 4. You only have to find 4 truths to finish the game. Maybe I'm not sure, but there are like it looks like there's like 30 different paths that you can take. It kind of presents you with a grid as soon as you finish it, which is really neat. And it's kind of like a stamp system. And the other cool thing is that when it resets the story, your character is kind of aware of what's going on and comments on the fact that that was really weird. Like the story ended and now I'm back to the beginning. And even when choices present themselves, you're like, well, I know that guy is such and such, and that direction didn't pan out last time, so I definitely shouldn't pick it again.
Hmm.
And more paths will open up as you finish stories. It's really weird and unique, and I kind of want to keep playing to see what other paths they take because it doesn't stop there with that character being vaporized. Like it continues to be oddly serious and dark, which is surprising considering it's sort of like cartoonish look and
It
stuff.
reminds me of Disney's version of Robin Hood, where like
Yes.
Robin Hood is the fox, and then he's got all his like animal companions and stuff, and then like the sheriff is a weasel and the king is a lion, and
Hmm.
all that kind of fun stuff. So that's what it reminded me of. And then all of a sudden it was just like, oh, you think we're like Disney? Boom, vaporized, all your friends are dead. Like oh no.
Yeah, it is. It's totally reminds me of like classic Disney animation, except like you said, people are dying on screen and not just being hauled away to be like,
Yeah.
and he lived happily ever
Yeah.
after in a dungeon and he died. But it's it's just really neat, and the powers that you unlock. Because I was also worried, like you see this huge tech tree, and you're like you're leveling up every once a level or so, or once every other battle. And I was like, how am I going to unlock all this stuff when the story is clearly completing itself? So it just goes to show like how fun it can be when you go into a game blind and kind of take people's recommendations and run with them.
Yeah, I've been finding that a lot is like whether it's games or movies, the
Hmm.
more I've been avoiding information and avoiding spoilers, the better time that I'm having when I actually pick something up like that I either haven't heard of or heard of, like Quantum Break. I heard of Quantum Break. I was like, that looks like something I really want to play. End of story. Waits years for game to come out, plays game, loves game. Like
Records 2 hour special.
yes, which actually we should mention.
Hmm.
If you are a patron of The Gamers Inn, then you can go over to patreon.com/The Gamers Inn and check out our episode we did inside the game, kind of like a pilot. We learned some things because it is very long. So we learned some things about the format, and we're going to change some stuff for the next episode. But inside the game is a monthly special that we're going to do once we hit our next patron goal. So we're we just hit our game night goal, so our next goal is reachable, but still a little bit far away. But if you are a $2 patron or higher of the Gamers Inn, then you can actually be entered in to win a copy of Quantum Break, which we're going to give away at the end of April. So it is a copy for Windows 10, but we really, really love the game, and obviously because we spent literally 2 hours talking about it.
Yeah,
But
and waited through technical difficulties. So
yes, which I have now finished editing the video, so the video will actually go up later tonight. But yeah, so we had a really great time with the game. It is obviously full of spoilers. We go
yeah.
through the plot from start to finish, but it was a really, really fun episode. I really liked doing it. I loved playing the game. So again, that's going to be up on patreon.com/thegamersin. It is your sneak peek at what will happen when we hit our next goal.
yes. Oh, so much fun! I can't wait. We had a blast. So.
Yeah, we did. We really did. And I like it because it takes a lot of content out of TGI proper that kind of can clog up our episodes sometimes. So if we find a game where we want to actually go really in depth, sometimes that takes away from our current format and we end up going on and on and on, and then people can't actually watch Gamers In if they haven't played that game. So now with Inside the Game, you'll be able to take a look at what's going on in a game if you're interested in it, but if not, you don't miss out on a whole episode of Gamers In. So
Yeah.
that's what we're thinking. That's what's happening. And yeah, the sneak peek will be up over on Patreon. We're also going to post on YouTube. Everyone's going to be able to see it. We're not putting it behind paywalls or anything. It's just a pilot. So we definitely want your feedback because I know that there's a lot of things that I want to change for the next Inside the Game, but we obviously want to hear what you say. So if you like it just the way it is, maybe we won't change anything. Who knows? But yeah, so head on over to patreon.com/thegamersin to check out that post and let us know what you think. The last thing that we're going to talk about that we're playing this week is something that it's not necessarily playable yet, but it will be. And personally, it freaks the hell out of me. So
Yes.
basically, there was a video posted. It's just under 2 hours, or sorry, just under 3 hours. I think it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. And it is a simulation of the Titanic sinking in real time. So it
Hmm.
literally like starts when the iceberg is first sighted and goes all the way through until the Titanic actually sinks. And it's hauntingly creepy right now because there's no people on it. So you
Right.
don't actually see any of the panic. There's like some sound effects and stuff. Like there's some flares going off and some gunshots and the creaking in the water and all that kind of sounds. But there's no
Mhm.
like people until the very end for some reason, which was also, I don't know how much you watched, Ryan, but I watched, so I watched the whole thing, kind
Woof.
of. Um, I watched it at 2 times speed, and then I basically scrubbed along until, because they have like little captions that pop up telling you what's going on at a certain time. So
Hmm.
it'll say like lifeboat 12 was lowered. So I kind of like scrubbed ahead to that and then like watched a few seconds and then, yeah. So, anyways, it was, the whole idea is it's going to be a video game. So
Hmm.
right now it's just a simulation. It's kind of like a proof of concept thing. They've posted like maps of the Titanic, or I guess blueprints, layouts, whatever you want to call them, and they've kind of put like a green, yellow, or red for like their amount of progress on actually modeling, because they're literally modeling every single room in the Titanic. And the idea
Yeah.
is going to be that you can play a person. There's going to be a section of the game that's actually taking place in, I guess, where did it launch from? London? Or,
Hampton or something, or
yeah,
South
England,
something.
something, somewhere in Europe. But you'll actually get to play in the town. You'll get to walk around the town. You'll get to board the Titanic. You'll get to experience the voyage, and then you'll experience the sinking. And the idea is that it's going to be, it's a game. I don't like.
Okay. So I watched the video as well, and obviously the video is a representation of a big part of the game, but not in the context that you're watching a boat with a little bit of text. Like that is, it's a cool moment of watching the Titanic sink in real time, but the game you're now there's going to be multiple modes, but the game you are it's more interesting than just watching literally like a 2 hour
Yeah. So
sinking and it's you're inside the boat and if you go
yes.
to their website like you mentioned they're mapping out every room you can actually see how they're doing their progress
Hmm.
and see just how many rooms they're going to be mapping and they break it down by not started or in progress and completed and they have quite a bit of work to go. This is crazy.
Hmm.
It's a big boat as most of you know. You know.
And the amount of detail that they're going to, I mean, it's everything. There's like from wallpapers to furniture to like dishes and just everything. There's so much detail.
Mhm.
And it is it's just, I mean, I felt panicky, and I'm not a panicky person. I'm not claustrophobic. I'm not like any of that, but there are scenes later on once the Titanic starts to flood
Mm.
when you're actually like standing first person view in hallways, so you can see the water rising. You can, like watch it when it's coming up the stairs. Like the game is going to be essentially like, can you escape the Titanic? And but like in real time, like it's going to be like 3 hours of gameplay. Can you survive the sinking of the Titanic? And I'm just
Yeah.
like, I think that this is going like, it's going a little bit too far for me. Like
Well, yeah.
recreating a historical event in real time. I don't know. And the more I watched, the more I was thinking, like, if this is any kind of a VR experience, which we're still a couple of years away from the actual release of this game. They, like
Mm.
Ryan mentioned, they have a lot of work still to do.
Oh yeah.
VR, I imagine, is going to be much more prevalent, assuming it catches on and isn't just super gimmicky. Full on panic mode. And
Yeah.
again, right now, there's no people. I can only imagine what that game would look like once they add people.
Yeah, and you mentioned Oculus support, like they've already got videos of it working with Oculus, and they gave it to a bunch of streamers. There's a great video of streamers actually using it with the Oculus. And right now all they have is sort of this is a room on the Titanic, walk around it in VR kind of mode, but you can tell that first and foremost, like they are interested in having you experience this with VR. And really, a lot of these games, like the first person exploration games, are perfect for VR. And
Hmm.
every one of those is you're not gonna be surprised to see supports VR in some fashion
Hmm.
when these things come out. And you're right, like full on panic mode. And I think really it's because you know how it ends. And that's also the terrible thing about it, is because this is not just a historical event, it's a historical tragedy.
Yeah.
Like many people died. But what I'm really curious about is that are we finally going to settle that age-old question of whether they can fit two people on a door? Is are we going to figure that out?
Oh my God.
Are we Jocelyn, I'm
It
serious.
apparently, yeah, Kate Winslet has already she's been on talk shows. She's admitted, I saw it on those like Facebook, like clickbaity
Oh gosh.
type things. Anyways,
Right.
she admits that yes, she could have fit Leonardo DiCaprio on the door, but you know, that wouldn't have been the fantastic ending that it was.
Maybe he
So,
like didn't get like her picture right. It's just like
yeah, really.
you're just a really bad artist, man.
You're being punished for not painting well.
I can't let that picture see the light of day. So,
But yeah, so I guess like my initial feelings on this are just like it would be really interesting as like say a museum exhibit or something to be able to walk around the Titanic in VR. And I mean, I was living in Halifax, which is where the Carpathia, which is the rescue ship, the ship that was closest to the Titanic that ended up picking up a lot of survivors, actually came to Halifax, and that's also where there's a big section of the cemetery dedicated to unnamed Titanic victims.
sure.
And so there's also the Maritime Museum there, and they have a huge like that's what they just have so much Titanic. I get, is it memorabilia? I don't know. Is that the right word? Like artifacts, maybe. But anyways, they have a lot of stuff from the Titanic, and I don't that would be kind of cool to have in that museum to be able to walk around with like a VR headset and see what it was like and feel like you were there. But not in a panicky, tragic, the boat is sinking way. In a like, we're still in port in Europe and everything's fine.
Yeah, but and this is the whole thing, like in terms of this being an event that took place over 100 years ago, and how World War II shooters are still cool, and why futuristic shooters are still cool, is because I guess those things are so far removed. I'm not saying like
Well, I
you
think
should feel good about them, but I I don't know what's the difference here. To me, this seems like the same thing as playing a World War II game. It's still morbid. This is full on like you are going to experience thousands of people drowning around you. Like that's pretty dark.
Well, and I
Um,
think the thing is it's the real-time simulation of a tragedy. Every
yeah.
World War One or two video game that you play is removed in the way that it's not real time. It
Mhm.
doesn't have actual real people tied to it. Like the characters in the game are exactly that. It's like a reimagining historical fiction sort of a thing. Like,
Mhm.
yes, you're playing in that time, you're playing in that war, you're using those weapons. There are, you know, Axis and allies sort of
Yeah.
a feel, but it's not like, okay, you are going to be on battlefield X. You are surrounded by 17 people. Here are all their names.
Mhm.
These 15 of those 17 die, and we're going to recreate their deaths with perfect historical accuracy. And you're going to transverse the level, and you're playing Bob and his friend Steve were the only two to survive this battle.
Yeah.
And you are then also going to, you know, kill a certain number of Germans on the way because that's what Bob and Steve did. You know, like
Do you
it's
know who Steve ended up becoming?
who's
Captain
Steve.
America.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I didn't even think. Oh my
War is
God.
funny, isn't it? Oh, so good. No, I agree. And even when looking at some of the most realistic depictions of war in video games, you have the one game that was sort of praised as like this is D-Day. Like they did it. It was, I think, one of the first Medal of Honor games. And then you look at some war games that one was I think it was Spec Ops: The Line, in which it was pretty dark, similar to this in that it was not based on a real event, but kind of inspired by real events and just looking at the darker side of war. This is already a dark event, so they're not like, but they are focusing on the darker side of it. Like when you compare this to, they even mentioned in the article, James Cameron's Titanic film. Um, that's my extent of the knowledge when it comes to Titanic is that movie, and a little bit of other history as well. But you kind of have this idea of how it went down, and when you think of that James Cameron film and then think about playing a real life simulation of it, that gets really creepy because that movie did a really good job of sort of depicting the last moments of the Titanic. And at the end of this video, spoiler alert, I was thinking like, well, when's the ship going to break in half? And it does. It's not nearly it's not the same as it was in the Titanic film. It feels more real, and that's why it's just so, it makes your stomach drop.
It
It's kind of
does.
gross.
It is. It was just, I mean, you're expecting it because you know what happened. And still, it happened so quickly, I wasn't prepared for it. They slow down that moment in the
Yeah.
movie, and it happens quickly in the movie. Like, the Titanic basically goes from like listing on the side to split in half and under the water in like a minute and a half. It's literally like tilt up, snap, underwater.
Yeah.
Like it's just I can't, it's hard to even like talk about. I can't imagine either being like playing the game and either being in a lifeboat or still on the Titanic. Either way, like that's not something I want to experience.
Right. And, Eric in the chat room is saying that maybe because the Titanic was filled with civilians that were supposed to be on the unsinkable ship, and military dudes are in war usually, especially in the games. And I think that's a really good point. And you kind of look at other tragedies like what? Everybody's a fan, or not, maybe fan's the wrong word, but enthusiast about some sort of historical event. And if we're looking at these guys, three dudes building a Titanic simulator, like what's to stop people from being fascinated with Pearl Harbor, which brought the United States into World War II? Like that is an event that they could certainly grab onto and create a experience around. And is it morbid? Is it historical? Like when you look at this Titanic simulator, like it's historical because they're building it to the T. Like everything has been fact checked and built on sources. It's not like they're creating an entertainment product. Now there is some entertainment there with they have a subplot, I guess, where you're a dude who is following someone who framed you onto the Titanic, and you either have a choice of like solving who it is or escaping a damn ship. So in that sense, like creating a bit of entertainment around it, similar to how James Cameron put a love story in one of the greatest tragedies in the early 1900s, it becomes a little weird, where it stops being this historical thing and starts to be an entertainment product around, people dying. That's I think where it gets a little creepy as well. But I mean, kudos to these guys where we have the technology now that you can sort of take an obsession and a fascination and turn it into this product of like, this is kind of what's in their brain all the time when they're thinking about the Titanic, right? Like they are so awesomely focused on this historical event that they are now putting it into everybody's hearts and minds through Oculus Rift. But I agree with you. I don't want to touch this.
No, I do think that the simulation and the recreation of the Titanic, especially to the level of detail that they're doing, I think it has a lot of historical value. I think a lot of information and stuff got lost, and not necessarily about the Titanic, but just in general. I think that a lot of things tend to get lost as time goes on, and this is one way to kind of preserve this historical event and this historical information. I don't know if I necessarily like the gamification of a tragedy. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. And I definitely am not going to be able to play this. Like I was already with no people there, just watching the water rise from a first person view. I was like bordering on like panic attack. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
It's
hard
not
to
for
watch
me.
that
It's
film. Like,
really, yeah, it's hard to watch. That's for sure.
yeah.
So, the Gamers In this week is brought to you by, well, kind of brought to you by Black Desert Online guild called the Knights Templar. They've actually, we wanted to let everybody know they have merged with another guild.
Mhm.
So, Ryan, I think you probably know a little bit more about this than I do. So, I'm going to let
Yeah.
you take it away.
Perfect. So we were contacted by the Knights Templar representative, and he basically said, like, look, we don't, our recruiting problems are solved. We've merged with another guild, which is awesome because it's always great when guilds can come together and sort of form a hive mind of awesomeness. So they are going to be working together to take over Black Desert Online. I had mentioned, hey, like if you're still on that server, you're still interested in playing, like I'm sure you can get in touch with them and see if you can join the guild. They're just not actively recruiting right now. But if I know awesome guilds, they're always looking for fun people to play with. So definitely check out Black Desert Online. I know I said last time, it's too late. You can't kick me off the show. I've already done a half hour. I have installed it, so I'm going to play it. And then next week, we can talk about it and I'll let you know what I think. But yeah, so the server again was Orwin Balanos 2. And if you want to check out Black Desert Online and hang out with some cool peeps, I don't know what the new guild is called, but they were, maybe it's the guild formerly known as Knights Templar. I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. It's one of those MMOs that's sort of come across like over from Korea, and I think it's got some staying power because
Hmm.
I still hear about it to this day. And I think they just added another expansion. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and it's
pretty
been,
awesome.
what, 8 or 10 weeks since release? Because this is our seventh week of doing the ad. So,
Yeah. They're really pumping out content, which is great because usually when those games come over, they bring the base game and then they slowly bring over the expansions depending on how well the game's doing. But I think with Black Desert Online, they sort of fast tracked all of that stuff and it just looks fantastic. So, and it's all, I think all the expansions are free because you just buy the base game and you play it. So,
cool.
yeah, check it out.
That brings us to our topic of the week this week, and we are talking about the PlayStation Neo design leaks, or details, I guess, got leaked this week. Previously, it was being called by some, although not me, because I think it's really lame, the PS4.5. So now we have the actual internal, I guess, project code name for the next version of PlayStation, which is the Neo. And Ryan, this is definitely your baby here.
It's interesting, right? Because right now we covered this, I think, a while ago when they sort of started talking about it, and it's the concept of a console being upgraded. You can go out and buy a whole new console that has better guts, that does better things, and somehow doesn't ruin everything. Nintendo's been really good at developing new consoles in the same sort of what would you call it? I guess like generation
Hmm.
with the Nintendo with the 3DS having multiple versions, and then the newest one being the new 3DS that does something very bad and splits the user base by having a better hardware that can have exclusive games.
Yeah.
So with this idea of Neo, the cool thing is if it turns out to be true, because again, this is just a leak being confirmed, and I'm sure E3 will come around and this will all become official. But the Neo is a better PlayStation 4 that sort of and Sony's sort of grounding developers by saying, look, you can have the Neo version and you have the original PS4, but we don't want to split our user base. We still want to keep everybody united. And they have some really good rules in place that help do that. Um, but before we get to that, it's like, I don't know, like, how do you feel about them iPhoning your consoles? Like, does that bode well to you?
Not well. I mean, you're talking to someone who buys like one console per generation. I was lucky enough to get the Xbox as a gift this year, so that's the only reason I have two. Like, I still only purchased the PlayStation. I won't be buying any kind of next. Like, the next thing I buy will be the PS5.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's if you're a console gamer, which I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as a console gamer. I think I'm more of a PC gamer. Getting games on PC is kind of my go-to gut reaction is like that's where I game.
Mhm.
So, I don't know. I am not the target audience for this, but if all you did was buy consoles and play your games on consoles, I mean, it would take you an Xbox One, a PS4, and a Neo to come even close to the cost of a half decent gaming PC. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if your console gamers are trying to save money by being on consoles, then they're not the target audience here either. It's kind of interesting. It's
Yeah.
going to scale, or it's going to support, I guess, 4K resolution, and it's got improved basically everything, CPU, GPU, memory, everything is upped with the Neo. But if they're going to make whatever games are available on the Neo also available on the original PS4 to not split their audience, then I don't really see any reason. Like, the Neo to me in that case is more of a fluff piece, I guess. It's like,
Yeah, it's to put
it's another
more.
toy. Like, I guess I could get it, but I don't really
Mhm.
have to. So why would I spend hundreds of dollars?
It's kind of a combination of looking at a technology that's sort of rising up, which is 4K television.
Hmm.
I don't own a 4K TV, so
No.
I'm not going to go out and buy the Neo unless it truly proves that they are improving games they're calling Neo mode, which means, and that's one of the rules that Sony's put in place, is that your game can support the Neo, but must have support for the base model of the PS4, meaning that the game that you play on the base mode and the game that you play on a Neo needs to be the same exact game. There's
Hmm.
no exclusive modes. There's no exclusive options. It's just got to be an improvement upon the game. Like maybe, well, obviously resolution.
Yeah.
Maybe the graphics could look a little better. They use an example of you can't have an exclusive multiplayer mode, but you can maybe have an improved multiplayer mode on the Neo. But then that even gets into a sticky situation. I think maybe they basically say like online needs to operate the same across the board.
Hmm.
Um, and to me, like that would make consumers happy because they're like, oh, well, then I don't need to go buy this right away. I can kind of be happy with my base mode. And then those people who have a 4K television can go out and buy the Neo and feel happy that they are getting a 4K experience on their 4K TV that they just dropped a
Hmm.
couple paychecks on, which is great. And
I think
basically, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's nice to have that option, but
Hmm.
I don't know, because Goes in the chat room is saying it's like graphic settings on a PC. That's a really good way to look at it. It's like basic graphics and, high or ultra settings for your graphics.
Right.
But there's quite a big jump in cost there. And I don't really know if console gamers need or want that, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
sure that they want better graphics, but I don't know if they're going to want to drop even more money in this console cycle, because essentially they're not changing, like you said, like there are specific rules in place to make sure that this is not the PS5.
mhm.
So we're basically just getting upgraded hardware, but not to the point that it's a new system. So are we going to get a new system in a couple of years? Like, this is kind of stopgappy in
Yeah.
between the 4 and the 5. I don't know how big the audience would like. I kind of think this might be a little bit of a flop.
Well, yeah, it feels like it's kind of dead in the water now because we don't have any experience on the console market with this actually working. Um, I don't think there's been there's been revisions in which nothing changes. Like maybe the hardware gets less expensive and more compact, but never where you could play a game better on the PS4. And I think that's what Sony's trying to avoid is like less like playing the game better, just playing the game looking cooler. I don't know.
Hmm.
Like it's really tough. And when you look at it from the consumer point of view, it's like, man, I'm not getting the best version. And then you look at it from the developer's point of view, it's like, man, now I have to develop two
Yeah,
versions.
that's what I mean. Like, there's kind of negatives on both sides. There's more effort from a developer point of view because they have to make two versions of the same game, one with not so great graphics and one with really good graphics. And then from the consumer side, it's just like there's no actual, other than graphics, there's no difference. Like,
Mhm.
I could see the Neo being purchased if there were exactly what they're saying they're not going to have. Like if there were other game modes, if it,
Mhm.
allowed for new and different mechanics, if faster processing speeds meant cooler encounters, then sure, yeah. And that's like a console that I could potentially get behind.
Yeah.
But yeah, restricting the Neo to the PS4, like the original PS4, seems like a good and bad decision at the same time. Like not
Yeah.
splitting your user base, but also giving people no reason whatsoever to buy.
Well, it's tough, right? And if you look at what Sony's doing here, they're really just trying to have another box. Rather than just bundling a game and changing the art on the front of the box, they are creating a whole new console that plays all the games that are on the shelves. And the best part is that Sony knows how to market their stuff, so they're not going to have the same issue that Nintendo had, in which they were like, "Is the Wii U a new console or is it an add-on?"
Hmm.
I think this will be really clear, and Sony knows what they're doing on that front. But it also works to their benefit because if the NX launches this year, now the NX has competition. I mean, aside from the consoles that are already available during the holiday season, but this is a new box that's going to be marketed as new, and it's going to go straight up against Nintendo. And it's like, man, that's gotta suck because Nintendo probably thought, oh, we'll have this year to ourselves, and they're pretty
PlayStation's like,
unique.
nope.
Yeah, exactly. And who knows, Xbox could have a similar upgrade available to people, but they kind of are probably smart to sit and wait and see how this goes. It's kind of a gamble to let your competition try something new, and if it pays off, you're left in the dust again. But I think in this case, this is going to be a slow and not really well adopted thing because it's sort of the argument from when we hit the PS3 days where it's like not many people have HD TV or HD TVs. Like, is it really worth it? And in the end, it proved to be worth it because like a year later, like everybody had an HD TV. But in this case, I don't really know anybody who has a 4K television. Do
No.
you? Yeah. So it's an interesting thing, and I look forward to seeing what they're actually going to do. But come October, all games that release will have to support the Neo in some fashion, with some sort of upgraded functionality, which is also pretty crazy to like require your developers to have a Neo edition, I suppose,
Yeah.
or upgrade. Um, but nothing's official yet. So
Hmm.
this hasn't been announced. This is probably going to want to be the key things that gets announced at E3, if not sooner, considering this thing keeps leaking. Uh, but I think it's just, frankly, it's because developers are getting their hands on this thing. I think
Hmm.
that's why it's sort of out there. Similar to how the NX seems to have a new rumor every week. It's because developers are getting an eye on something or hearing specs or having conversations, right? And this is how this stuff works. But it doesn't sound like this is for us. I don't know who it's for.
Hmm.
But like, let's say they announce a game that has Neo functionality. Like, I think that's really what gets people to buy these consoles, or at least convince themselves that they want to buy these consoles. Like, remember when the new 3DS came out and they were saying like it's gonna have an exclusive camera stick on Majora's Mask? Like, did that make you want to go buy a new 3DS?
Nope.
Exactly. So I think it's a similar idea, and Nintendo never shut down people from making exclusive new 3DS games. Those exist. There aren't many of them, but considering Sony is taking the path of it must be on both consoles, you're probably going to see more of the extra camera stick type functionality, as opposed to anything too crazy.
Hmm.
But look forward to EB Games asking for your old PS4 really soon.
So we want to remind everybody that we have our upcoming TGI events. We have the Patron Hangout and Game Night tomorrow. That is
Hmm.
Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can go over to patreon.com/thegamersin to let us know what you want us to play. I will say that not this week, but next week, Rocket League has an update and they are putting basketball in the game. So that is potentially a thing that we could do next week. It is a free update to Rocket League, so it's not DLC that you have to purchase. So could be cool.
And check out our Discord servers because that's what we're going to be using for our Hangout again. And make sure you test out your audio settings, and then we'll have some fun.
Yeah. So again, the links to our Discord servers can also be found over on patreon.com/thegamersin. We also wanted to take a minute to thank our patron of the week this week, who is Peter W. Thank you so much for your support. We really, really appreciate it. You guys make game night happen. So thank you so, so much for your support. I think that pretty much does it for us this week. If you'd like to visit us on the web, you can do so at gamersinpodcast.com. You can also find us on AMove TV along with other fabulous podcasts, including The Angry Nerd, Into the Nexus, Overwatchers, and The Angry Chicken. You can follow us on Twitter. You can find me, Jocelyn, at Joce Plays. Ryan is at R. Murphy, and don't forget to follow the show at The Gamers In. The video versions of all our episodes can be found on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/AMoveTV. You can also find the show on Facebook and Google+. If you'd like to email the show and let us know what you think about the Titanic sinking or Dark Souls 3, please do so at info@gamersinpodcast.com. So thanks for staying at The Gamers In, and remember, tune in next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.